Okay, it's day 83, and this is part 3, and there is Khashoggi 1. Khashoggi 1 is our plane that may very well have been the plane to fly weapons for drugs. Could be legal drugs, we don't know the answer to that. In China, as well as for Green Aviation, CIA plane there, as well as for Saudi Airlines. So, very much tied to Adnan Khashoggi, who may have owned the plane or controlled the plane at one point, who was the world's most wealthy arms dealer, and was related to the guy now from Khashoggi, Jamal Khashoggi, who was this kind of sort of image maker for of course, Osama bin Laden. So that's what we mean when we say Khashoggi 1. The partners or the backers of Khashoggi 1 is really what we use it for now. This group that was this Osama bin Laden group that was kind of the boogeyman group at the CIA that created sort of a rogue CIA that kind of turned into Blackwater, right? So it starts out as the bin Laden boogeyman group as an off-spin and offshoot in Tyson's Corner, Virginia. It's got guys like John Brennan and Hayden and Clapper and guys like Cofer Black that start Blackwater, and of course our favorite friend Schmitz, who wants to change the American language to German and have all his Nazi paraphernalia and all of our various signs and seals as a part of our Department of Defense. Who knows if he's responsible for the Nazi art over there at Fort Belvoir that rolls in and out on Wednesday nights? We don't know the answer to that question right now. We don't know if he sent in Nate Kane to delete records from the days of those halcyon days of contracting in the early days of the Iraq War. But now our president is there saying that he's going to stay in Iraq, of course. You may or may not remember me tweeting out, there was folks at the Andrews Air Force Base saying that they were preparing for him to come out there with the First Lady, when I said this a week ago, to meet the troops. Now, the only thing I had wrong with the story was I didn't realize the troops weren't coming to Andrews Air Force Base. I didn't realize he was flying to Iraq, but I had the story correct, and at the time I said that, Melania was in Florida with Barron and had not made the decision to come back home yet. So, sources are good at Andrews Air Force Base. Thank you, Andrews Air Force Base. And in a way, I'm glad I took the tweet down because I didn't want anybody to know that he was going to be there anyway. So, it all worked out okay. But you see Trump now going back to these places where we've promised limited conflict, where we've promised boiling conflicts. And with boiling conflicts come peace zones or green zones. And these green zones have been, unfortunately, for contractors like DynCorp and other military contractors like Blackwater, they've been green zones as far as money is concerned. These Blackwater guys were making $600 a day, then $800 a day, then $1,000 a day. Much more than our troops that were making that maybe in a week. So there's always some resentment against the Blackwater folks when they were in Iraq. So strange that Trump is going to be there today saying, we're not moving you guys. Plus, he moved the other folks that were in Syria, maintaining a green zone for, again, private interests like Genie Energy and Jim Woolsey, who ran the CIA along and is in this cabal with our good friend Dick Cheney and John Brennan, etc. He moved their green zone. He took their green zone down. He took our soldiers away from the Cheney, Brennan green zones. And when I say green zone, I mean money zones. And he moved them to Iraq to help the people of Iraq rebuild their country, which is good. He also moved them very close to, within 60 miles or 50 miles of the Iranian border. And I predict, as I said this morning, maybe not in the strongest terms that I said this morning, but we will get our centrifuges back one way or the other. Our secret from the centrifuges and our centrifuges back from Iran. You heard it here first, beginning in the first of the year. But again, nobody believed me when I said the president was going to Andrews Air Force Base on Christmas Eve, so I don't expect anybody to believe that prediction either. But again, I've outlined it all clearly in many of my videos of over a year ago, so you can see what bases and what places will be targeted. So the good news here is that we are pointing our finger at the conspirators, which nobody has had the courage to do. Everyone sat back and said, oh, this is this is okay that the CIA rules our country for another 50 years. The last person to stand up and really say something was John F. Kennedy, and he hired a bunch of people like McDuff from our series. I just put out a little sort of memorial to him. And I also talked about hopes for the future, like Agent McMahon, the FBI guy now, 50 years later, who stood up and said, hey, we're not vetting these people like Imran Awan coming into our country. So it's not all, just a memorial to McDuff, but it's kind of a hopeful message that we can identify people like a Robin Gritz or a McMahon to be the ones, the whistleblowers that can be the ones that can do the reforming and maybe not break the CIA into 1,000 pieces, but maybe break it into 7 or 8 pieces and get rid of the private CIA, which is Blackwater, and these Blackwater privateers, these pirates that take their money and build places like this. They build places like National Harbor. This was built by the Peterson Group, the same group that built Blackwater's headquarters and the Bin Laden Boogeyman Group building over I believe it's in Langley, Virginia, or right on the corner of Tyson's Corner, right between those two places. So the key here is courage. The key here is actually going and pointing and saying that's Khashoggi 1, that's pay to play, that's CIA, that's rogue CIA, that's Blackwater, that's Schmitz, that's Clapper, that's Hayden, that's Brennan, that's Cofer Black. These are the people that then they conspired against and compromised. The people like Admiral Rogers and Mike Flynn are now holding the bag. They've been kind of enticed into this world slowly but surely, small compromises all the way, and now they're being scapegoated, and they're holding them responsible for the last 40 years of illegal drug trade and arms trade. So here's Mike Flynn, just doing the phones, just doing the green zone phones, these special tactical phones, doing his job, find and fix, right? Being asked to get brought into this world of enabling these different programs, these nuclear programs, both for Saudi Arabia and the 6 different nations, the Sunni nations on one side of the Gulf, Persian Gulf, and then of course probably some support through Kian, his business partner. Again, he was introduced and kind of lulled into being his business partner over a series of years into making the Iran nuclear deal happen. Again, I've always said Mike Flynn worked the Sunni side and worked through an intermediary on the Iran side, and it was potentially through the green zone phones, these encrypted phones. We'll see later if that's true or not. But there's other people now emerging in this kind of conspiracy with the Iran nuclear deal that are coming forward that I want to put out there, and one of them is named Khan. Believe it or not, I am saying the Iran nuclear deal was a con to begin with, but there's now another name, Mohammed Akbar Khan, Khan, a politician in California that came up with Bijan Khan, the other partner with Mike Flynn in the firm Flynn Intel Group. He's also a partner in the Green Zone's phone company, right? So that person coming up through the California ranks is also a strong advocate of these green zones, again, money zones, for Syria and Iraq. These America-occupied and protected areas then that bring in contractors that seem to engage, unfortunately, in all the rat line activities, gun running, child trafficking, drug running, etc., as well as trading in other illegal things, extortion, etc. Again, if you go back to 2 years, you'll see my series on DynCorp. This Khan guy, this Mohammed Akbar Khan, right, is one of these super green zone advocates because they realize that there's money in those green zones. Green zones are protected areas. Again, our U.S. military is being used to protect the interests of these pirates that then come in as privateers and then run all these rat lines. Again, it's a very small percentage of these privateers that are making this money, but now we've identified yet another K, it's like a club K, yet another K Khan that's associated in this group that we need to start drilling down and looking at. Okay, so there's a lot of other folks that Khan seems to have close relationships that are in the metals business, this high-end metals business that tend to go into things like centrifuges that go into nuclear programs for both Sunni nations and Shiite nations. Again, interesting connection for somebody who is an export-import banker here in the United States on Vermont Avenue. It seems to be He's an Iranian. He's got all these Iranian connections. He has these connections into Iraq now, into Syria. Seems like he's kind of exporting nuclear technology for interests here in the United States, friends in the United States, like a Lockheed or a U.S. Enrichment, etc., those kinds of companies. And he's kind of the front man, if you will. Now, again, I'm not saying Mike Flynn is involved in a lot of the nuclear business, but I do think he was being read into the nuclear business. He was read into a set of trips in October of 2015 to pitch these Russian nuclear reactors to 6 different Sunni nations in Iraq, 6 different Sunni nations, including Saudi Arabia, with 30 reactors. And then later again with this IP3 group in September, August and September of 2016. So he's slowly being brought in, Mike Flynn slowly being brought in. He's the operational security guy. He's the one who's bringing these green zone phones in that have this encryption built in so that the people involved in this covert program have a micro cloud, a private cloud, if you will, between them, which is good. And that's probably why Flynn is being brought in. How far did Flynn go? How far did they compromise him into the program? That's the key question we can't answer yet. But we are starting to look at different people like this guy named Sushani. Again, I put all this stuff out on the Twitter, that owns a company called Bob's Metals, right? So Bob's Metals, here's another thing coming from data coming in about Kian. Bob's Metals. It's like, if my name was Sushani and his first name isn't Robert, I wouldn't call my company Bob's Metals unless I was doing metals for our good friends over here at the Pentagon, right? Bob Otto, CIA agent who is involved in shipping illegal items to Iran, right? Sending illegal emails to, I believe, Bob Levison. Again, this is not confirmed through Robin Gritz or any other FBI folks, but independently through other means. And Anya Blonsky, who is the wife of Bob Otto, who speaks perfect Russian and would be the perfect intermediary for bringing in Russian reactors into Iran and other countries. Again, remember, we got Bijan Khan proposing Russian reactors in these 6 Sunni nations. So a key contact there. And of course, Bob Levison's still in Iran. Now, there are rumors that there is an envoy happening right now with Bob Levison and with Mike Pompeo. It'd be interesting to see where Mike Pompeo is today, but there are supposedly discussions with the Iranian leader as a go-between to the Iranian, because Trump wants to get to the truth of Bob Levison, whether he's acting as an agent for John Brennan or whether he truly is a fugitive. Now, that is rumor, but it was a rumor when I said Trump was going to meet the troops and be at Andrews Air Force Base with Melania on Christmas. So that came true. Is this Bob Levison rumor true? We don't know that to be the case. I will say one thing, just to finish this off. New names, I just want to put some new names out there. This Mohammed Akbar Khan, this guy who's proposing green zones. Funny that his business partner Kian, Bijan Kian, would have a company called Green Zone Systems, right, to enable these privateers, these rogue CIA blackwaters to go into these places to create green zones for themselves and enrich themselves, right? So it's strange that you would have that person there. But now I think Trump is asking that question about Iran. What is the true situation going on in Iran? Is there a private pay-to-play situation going on through Kish Island through Iran? That is the key question. May or may not be true, may just be a Christmas trip to Iraq, maybe nothing more than that, just a photo opportunity. Here he comes, there he goes story. There may be more to the story. There may be more to the story. Again, I say beginning on the 1st of the year, there will be operational plans made toward Iran and their violation of sanctions. Right now, Iran is violating sanctions. I believe the folks that moved up from the ISR group that were in Syria have moved closer to Iran for a very good reason, for gaining ISR, which is intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. Again, these guys fly these little UAVs, and gals, fly these little UAVs with green zone phones, off-the-shelf phones, which have been modified with a quad processor SD card so they can get a telemetry, but they can also get a video feed from their UAV that they're flying, and they can fly these things at a distance. They can be you know, within 20 miles of the border, and they can fly over the border and see things that are coming and going at key strategic points. If you're a guy named Faruqi and you're sending a bunch of trucks across Iran and you're sending illegal centrifuges, if you filled it up with Bob's metals, Bob's high nickel, high zirconium metals, you know, if you're shipping a lot of variegated metals through Iran, this new crew from Syria is the same kind of signal intercept crew that Mike Flynn, the same kind of people he trained in the signal intercept piece of the Army. And they're going to be able to pick up. They have different sensors and so forth that they can pick up if the wrong things are supposed to be in these trucks that shouldn't be in these trucks. Again, Faruqi currently still has a contract. He's not shipping through Iran anymore, but he currently still has a contract to ship to Afghanistan. Okay, we're going to leave it there. We're going to talk about Khashoggi 1, just to remind you who it is, a private CIA. We're going to say exactly who it is. It's the Bin Laden Boogeyman Group. It is Blackwater. It's the original group of Blackwater, and we're tracking them. We found them, and we fixed on them. Now, we're not going to finish them because we would never do that. We would put them, you know, maybe in a plane like that, let them have a bunch of controls, let them think that they're still running the CIA, let them think they're still doing covert actions in green zones all over the world. We may even give them green zone phones to play with. We may even let them think that they have their own private cloud. So that would be finishing them, just giving them their own kind of Truman Show in their own Air Force One. The other thing about this Khan guy, this Akbar Khan, this Mohammed Akbar Khan, very good friends with Madeleine Albright. Again, whenever I see Madeleine Albright, I think green zones, which are those horrible sex trafficking zones in Kosovo and also Bosnia, and of course Croatia and then Slovenia, not as badly affected, but all these other places, Montenegro, that were affected so badly. And then they become these pay-to-play ports for the Carlyle Group type of folks, like the guy who ran Barrick Gold, and I can't remember his name all of a sudden, and Oleg Deripaska. They get turned into pay-to-play ports for institutionalizing and for putting into concrete the rat lines that were at one point just green zones, just temporary dens of iniquity, get institutionalized and built in pay-to-play ports like Montenegro. I can't remember his name right off the bat, the guy who ran Barrick Gold, who's now passed away, but you get the idea. Tom Barak, friend of the president, I think maybe in that group as well. Again, this is no more using U.S. troops for private pay-to-play partnerships for side green zones. We're striking right at that. We're doing what Mike Flynn did with terrorists, only we're doing it with economic terrorists. We're finding them. We found them. There they are. We're fixing them. We're following them wherever they go. And we're going to finish them by putting them on a plane, giving them their own Truman Show, giving them their own little play-to-play world. We'll even put green zone phones in there and let them play with them, but they will not affect the world like they are now and have done in the last 50 years. Who will the heroes be? Will it be a Michael McMahon? Will it be a Robin Gritz? Will it be someone like that? We don't know. We're going to find them, though. Thanks very much.